report. Hamilton, how's it going? How's vacation?
It's great. I'm back. I've been out of the loop, at least with the crypto space. I'm hoping that you're going to be able to fill me in here. We're going to go through all of the normal charts that we go through, and I want you to kind of talk me through this as if I'm looking at this stuff, which I quite literally am, for the first time in a week or two. I mean, I'm going to, address the elephant in the room. First things first, October is supposed to be the best month, seasonally speaking, for Bitcoin, and this has not been the best month for Bitcoin. So let's go ahead and kind of talk about that first. What are your expectations? What are we actually looking at right now? What can we reasonably expect into the last week of October, and then obviously through the year? What are you thinking?
Yeah, great question. I mean, looking at the chart, regardless of the time frame, maybe except for the weekly, it just looks like mental illness is the reality. You took a good week to take off because ever since the October 11th crash, the market has just been a bit of a shitstorm, to be honest.
Really
I'm
quick,
not sure if
I want to point something out here because, obviously TTI, we look at all markets, not just the crypto market, but you're feeling that same sentiment across TradFi, across the crypto space, everything. Kind of everybody is dancing on eggshells here, and we just got the AAII investor survey information out this morning, and again, we have more bears than bulls in the market. And, ask me 5 years ago how much the AAII investor survey mattered for the crypto market, and I would have probably said not a lot. There wasn't, this huge push for a lot of people to own crypto. It was still kind of a fringe thing, kind of the nerdy guys or whatever. They would own it and they talk about it, but your mom and your grandpa and stuff, they didn't really, they might have talked about it as a scam or a Ponzi, but they didn't own it. Nowadays, they actually own this stuff. So when I look at the AAII investor survey and I go, wow, there's still an overwhelmingly large amount of bears in the market, more than bulls. I think that does directly reflect into the crypto sentiment as well. And for those of you that are not experienced, I guess I should say, which, I say that with a grain of salt because it never feels good, but you don't have a lot of experience under your belt trading these volatile assets, it could definitely feel like you're getting your absolute ass kicked over the last couple of weeks, not only in the TradFi market, but the crypto market as well. Right, Josh?
Absolutely. I mean, again, it doesn't help that crypto has 24-hour headline risk and illiquid periods in the market. Like that's what partially caused the October 11th crash. That was far and away the biggest thing to impact crypto ever. Nevertheless, in the last 4 years, and so
by the way, that is wild. And I don't think people understand just a couple of weeks ago how big that was in the market. Now, a lot of that has to do with the fact that there's so much more money in the market now. But let me take a step back. I want to ask you something because I got proved wrong, and that's totally okay. Around here, I'm okay with being wrong as long as I'm not wrong for a very long time. That's fine. I was wrong because I had conversations with you and some other guys out there that are interested, obviously, in owning this stuff, that I didn't expect to see these big, massive declines or rips in the market anymore because of the institutional bid and stuff like that. That there's just so much more money in the pot now. And then we got an absolute fucking massacre in altcoins. I mean, it was literally the worst ever, and partially because there's so much more money now. So I was wrong. I didn't expect stuff like that to happen. But now you have to traders and investors out there, they've experienced it. They saw what just happened a couple of weeks ago where all of these altcoins dropped like 90% congruently all at the same time. That is insane.
It really is. I mean, it was a perfect storm, is what it was. You had a really negative headline on legitimately the most illiquid hour of crypto going into the weekend, 5 p.m. Eastern. And to top it off, you had, momentum building, right? You had, regardless of what you think of insiders, a lot of big money came in minutes before and placed massive shorts with leverage. The one whale alone had $1.1 billion leverage short going into the market a few minutes before the headlines hit. And so it was really a perfect storm for illiquidity, headline risk, and then, what actually caused, we're learning now as weeks go by, we're learning that what actually caused those massive drawdowns was an infrastructure problem on Binance's side. Essentially, it said prices were lower than they should have been, and a lot of exchanges use one another's price to create an index price so that you understand what the value of said product or coin or project is. And as a result, it nuked everything incredibly low. There were coins that were trading at, let's say, $4, $5. It went to a tenth of a cent, like really bad. And so through that, we had this massive capitulation event. 20 billion is the official number. It's likely closer to 30 to 40 billion, just based on how liquidation data comes from exchanges. They can only provide one liquidation per second. And in a 7-minute period where 20 plus billion is lost, it's likely to be closer to double that. And so, all of the leverage has been wiped out of altcoins, really. Essentially, every single altcoin in the top 10, all the way down to the dog shit at the bottom, has essentially no leverage left, and that's why we haven't really seen it bounce at all, because there's just very little liquidity now in a lot of these altcoins. Whereas we saw a V-shaped recovery on Solana, Ethereum, Bitcoin. Those are the bigger dogs that can bounce much more quick. And like you said, there is institutional passive flows, bids, funding in those assets. On that massive drawdown day, Bitcoin didn't even close below 112K. It stayed in the range while everything else was down 60% on the kind of relief bounce. And so yeah,
I want to lean in on that right now. But before I do want to point out that back in, for those of you that have been in the crypto space for a long time, and I've been in the crypto space now for over 10 years, which makes me feel like a fucking dinosaur in the space. But I remember back in 2017, if I'm not mistaken, Coinbase used to have this trading platform, and it was really, really nice, actually. They got rid of it. But Coinbase essentially caused an Ethereum flash crash, and you had bids. I don't remember exactly what Ethereum was trading at the time, if it was multiple hundreds yet or whatever it was, but you had bids get filled at 5 cents. So you had a flash crash. Everybody got liquidated because obviously everyone's trading with a bunch of fucking leverage, which, by the way, not financial advice, but if you want to live to see the next day, try to really discourage you from using leverage that leaves you open to unlimited losses. Okay, if you're going to use isolated or use options or whatever you need to fucking do to juice up your capital. But if you're opening cross positions, and by the way, hand up, I've done it before. I've been liquidated before in the crypto market off of this crap. You just got to learn the lesson once. It's just not worth it. It's not worth it. And as Josh said, it could happen at 3 a.m. when you're sleeping. So I remember Ethereum flash crashing way back in 2017. And just to see it happening at this scale now is absolutely insane. But to your point about Bitcoin holding above 112 or whatever at the time, kind of where I want to take this conversation is what we just traded through, what we owned through, was a historic event, not necessarily a good one either. It was quite literally the largest liquidation day of all time. And by the way, for those of you that don't know, all of that money doesn't just go poof into the air. It has moved into other people's pockets. So if you're a petty asshole like me, it only takes one time like that in your life to never make the same mistake again. I don't want to give my money to these fucking assholes. And, they made a lot of money. But Bitcoin, from a market structure standpoint, I hate to say it, still bullish. I'm still bullish, trading above an upward sloping 200-day moving average. And something that we'd actually talked about a week and a half ago before I went on vacation was the 200-day moving average is kind of the gold standard when it comes to, thinking about trends, particularly primary trends. And Bitcoin doesn't necessarily respect its 200-day moving average, at least in the same way that it does in the TradFi market. As a matter of fact, if you go back through history and you look at these strong uptrends within Bitcoin, you'll notice that plenty of times within these uptrends, it does invalidate the 200-day moving average and then pop right back up. So at the time of talking about this, we were still trading north of a 200-day moving average. We did break below it or above it again. But what I care more about is the fact of where is the slope? What is the slope telling us of this 200-day moving average? If you really want to get into it, go to the 50-day moving average as well to get an intermediate term trend line as well. And figure out, they both still sloped up? Is the 50 still stacked on top of the 200? I think that would give you a better understanding of which direction Bitcoin is heading in a primary trend standpoint. As of right now, from a market structure standpoint, we're still within a bullish momentum regime. Doesn't feel like it, but we are, folks. Until we hit oversold, we are still in a bullish momentum regime. We're still trading in a primary uptrend, and from a just base case support resistance type of technical trading, we're still trading above previous oscillation highs, right? We've so far been able to kind of stick this 105 to 110 area. Now, are we going to break below it? I don't know. If I told you, it would be complete bullshit, because I have no idea what's going to happen over the next coming days or even a week. But over the longer term, which obviously my positions are trying to capture, Bitcoin still looks like we're going to continue higher. What do you think? Am I off kilter there or what?
No, I'm with you. And I think kind of watching this key level, we're sitting and hovering around that 106, 107K area is kind of where I'm going to be making a lot of my decision making is if we get a real breakdown through there and sustained move, that's when I'm going to probably risk off for a little while and just see where we settle. Even if it reclaims and I have to buy back a few percent higher, so be it. I think two things I want to touch on is that it's pretty incredible to me, at least, that over the last about month and a half, OG Bitcoin whales have sold 28,000 coins. I think that's around $30 billion, something like that. And we have yet to break this range, right? They have sold 28,000 Bitcoin in the last month and a half, and we're still trading at $109,000. I think that tells you something about the bullish market structure and that those orders are being absorbed, whether that's through massive liquidation events or just the mental illness on the screen right now, Bitcoin trading, up half the day, then down half the day and back and forth. Like, I think that's something to acknowledge. The other thing, talking about the 200-day moving average, we were chatting in TDI about this, and I saw it on Twitter and ended up making a couple tweets and a newsletter. But if you actually pull up the 3-day chart, which is a really popular chart for crypto traders, I know it's not for equities, but just based on how the 24-hour clock works, 24-hour trading session, sorry, a lot of folks really like the 3-day for a higher time frame. And if you have a 100 SMA on the 3-day, it actually kind of perfectly highlights the entire bull market essentially since March of 2023. And the 3-day 100 SMA has acted since a 20K retest on, I think, where are we looking here? March 5th has acted as the, essentially lows of any drawdown in Bitcoin over those last 3 years, 2.5 years. And so
It looks fine to
I'll
me.
pause there. But yeah,
This looks
exactly.
fine. I'm obviously some people are out there rolling their eyes when you say this, and I'm not necessarily agreeing with that. But I will tell you that there is a little bit of confirmation bias when you're like getting into the thick of shit, trying to find things to like, hey, I'm bullish.
Of course.
Now I have to find
Of
why
course.
I'm bullish instead of. But I mean, yeah, from looking at this, I don't use the 3-day chart. I don't use the 100 moving average on the 3-day chart, but yeah, it makes sense to me. I mean, it looks pretty good every single time. Is dynamic support. Price comes down here, we bounce. We'll see. I mean, this is first time I'm seeing this, and it looks okay from a first glance. There's one thing I want to point out, and we kind of talked about this conversation earlier today in the Discord, not necessarily for crypto, but for those of you that are trading the TradFi market as well. Go and look at your insurance ETF KIE. That people on Twitter and social media like to throw around the term distribution. They don't really know what it means. We were talking about what a distribution fractal really looks like. What are the signs of distribution in the market? You look at your insurance ETF KIE, you could make a case that there's some distribution going on there, and we are potentially looking to break down into a stage 4 decline, which, got to go look at financials after that and stuff like that. Still, weight of the evidence suggests higher. So you don't want to, charge a chart as guilty before it actually is. The reason why I bring this up is there signs of distribution in Bitcoin? First thing I think of when you tell me that OG whales have sold 28,000 BTC and it's been absorbed is, what do the highs look like? One of the key characteristics of a range that ends up being a distribution range is that volume tends to spike into the highs, and then price pulls back into the range, and you come in, it's the first time I'm really looking at this in the last couple of weeks, but you'll see that we spiked up into the highs, selling volume came in, we're right back into the range. Spike back up into the highs, no overwhelming sell volume came in, spike up into the highs, sell volume came in. So and I'm not here to tell you this is distribution, but these are signs, right? I mean, more so than being a Bitcoin bull is I want to make money. I want to make money. I'm owning Bitcoin because I want to turn it into dollars, and I want those dollars to pay my fucking bills. That's the whole point. And so I want to make the best possible trading decision. And as of right now, I mean, am I bullish? Yes. Am I going out and buying every goddamn thing I can with BTC? No. I'm allocated in Bitcoin. It's underperformed my expectations. It has not told me definitively that I'm wrong, so I'm staying with it. But, to tell you that I'm excited here, I would be a liar. I'm not. We'll see what happens. Right? Trends are still up, and so therefore I expect it to go higher. But very underwhelming October, to say the minimum.
And I mean, so far this October has been the
This is the
second worst October
second,
in
yeah,
history.
yeah,
Yeah, the worst was like a bear market in 2014 where it was down 12%. But
2014.
otherwise, this is the worst October to date. And that being said, we have what 7, 8 days left in the market, and we know how fast Bitcoin can move. People were starting to get a little bit excited on Monday, I believe it was, when we had that spike up to 113, and then news
I
once again
was.
sold us off. Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. I bought the kind of 106, 105 lows on the previous Friday with this expectation of us bouncing. And so, we still have that 7, 8 days to really see, at least ending the month green. But as of right now, I think we're down a handful of percent on the month, maybe 4 or 5%. And so, Q4, we can't just kick the ball in the road, but Q4 is the most bullish of all the quarters. November and December are also typically great for Bitcoin. I think when I mentioned that kind of OG selling is that you, as someone who's been in crypto for a long time, knows how deep the ethos runs of 4 year cycles in crypto, right? That is something that people with, $10 or $10 million believe very firmly in. And as a result, we are coming up on the 4 year cycle, right? Typically the market always in crypto, if you want to go with the assumption that you're in a 4 year cycle, tops in October, November, or December of this year. This is the fourth year. Now, I don't believe that we're in 4 year cycles anymore. I believe that's changed. I think a lot of things in this past cycle have been extremely different, and thus, pointing to a change in dynamics, especially with passive ETF flows, regulatory clarity, and everything else. But that is one of the reasons why all these OG whales are selling, is that this is just what they do every 4 years around this time, and they've been wrong before. And that's something I wanted to write about today, is that these same accounts, these same whales who are selling en masse right now, were wrong when the ETF launched. The ETF launched, and because it didn't go to $100,000 in one day, like everyone thought it was going to, who is just, filled to the lungs with hopium, all of these OG whales sold out around sub $40,000. And then as a result, had to buy back in when Bitcoin continued to run. And so when the ETF launched, the price of Ethereum, or the price of Bitcoin, started was at 44,000. We spiked to 4750, and then we drew down to, I think, 37,000. And over that period, those whales sold their assets, and then they bought back higher. And we're now trading at nearly $110,000. So just flagging that,
I mean, I'm on the
these
safe
people
side.
are,
I think this 4 year cycle is probably at least the way that we had expected, or not expected, but
yeah.
what we've grown to know is over. I think you're right. One thing I want to point out, though, is that this is still a very, very new asset class. We really only have 15 years worth of data. So everything we're talking about, like, you take 15 years worth of data in the TradFi market, and somebody would fucking, laugh at you. It's not enough data to really do anything with. One thing I want to draw back on for 1 second, and we're going to talk BTC dominance and get into Ethereum, is that the correlation between gold and Bitcoin is very high. At least in the long term. Short term, they're inversely correlated, meaning that gold tends to rip, Bitcoin consolidates, and then Bitcoin rips and gold consolidates. Over the longer term, though, they both are highly correlated. Now, how you want to explain why is completely up to you, but I tend to think it has to do with rising or failing global liquidity, and right now we are still in a relatively strong, and has weakened over the last couple of weeks here, but relatively strong uptrend in global liquidity expanding. Therefore, you would assume that assets that are correlated with global liquidity will probably continue to perform well. So let's talk Bitcoin dominance really quick, because this has been a big thing for a lot of people. BTC, obviously, when we think about in terms of market cap, BTC is the largest crypto in the space. It's the flagship name. Going back to summer, though, we saw BTC break down substantially, by the way. It went from a 66% BTC dominance to around 58, 57, 56. And that gave enough, by the way, for some altcoins to run, mainly Ethereum and stuff. But gradually, over the last couple of weeks, we've seen Bitcoin kind of creep back up. My question for you is, you don't have to have some detailed answer or not, is, do you expect Bitcoin dominance to continue to tick higher through the end of the year? Or is this a setup where you would expect eventually this is a potential topping pattern and will continue to roll over, and the money that's coming into the crypto space, wherever it is and whenever it comes in, will it trickle into altcoins, including Ethereum, or do you think that Bitcoin is going to get the lion's share?
That's a good question. I would imagine that we're going to probably climb up and at least retest that 200-day moving average at around just shy of 62%. And then, I can't predict the future. We don't TTI, we trade price. And so, that my best guess is given the damage that was done from the crash, Bitcoin and blue chips are going to outperform for a little while, which means Bitcoin dominance is going to increase.